And away we go, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world today. This is Coffee Talk. Coffee Talk, talking about what's going on in the world today, what's going on in the news, some things you may know about, some things you may not, as we get into today's discussions. And of course, you can find me on Coffee Talk or at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University on YouTube, and at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter. And not to forget Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, where you can find me Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. And of course, this is the live portion, which takes place on the two YouTube channels simultaneously, podcasting, broadcasting, something or other casting. And I do try to read through as many of the comments as is realistic so the people that are listening and not able to see what's going on can keep up. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have chimed in thus far. And I see Helter is here, Dragon, Urban Angst, Rodney, All People, Velvet Pilot is here, Element is here. It says it made it listening while working. Glad you could make it today. Monkey is here. Boogers is here. It says listening in the background as he does preventive maintenance on farm equipment. Good idea. Don't wait till it falls apart. Don't wait till it breaks down before you fix it. You know, when you I was talking to a housing inspector once, and he says, "Do you know what the three biggest problems are with a house?" And his answer was water, water, water. You know, that's his clever thing. Because, and of course, water can destroy your home. That's not entirely true. The biggest, in my opinion, the biggest problem with a house is neglect. you you half-ass something. Something wasn't fixed right, or something was ignored until it got out of control. That's my opinion of it. I see Fluke Man has joined us, as well as Preparedness Veteran popping in today, and Johnny Future. Johnny Future has made it also just listening. And I get a lot of that. People are just listening. Or, of course, if you go to the Fistful of Radio, you have no choice but to only listen. You can't, I don't think you can see me there. But we'll go ahead and we'll start jumping in. Actually, this is not a news story, but I wanted to show you this because I think it's stupid. It's an email that I got, and I got it from GoFundMe. And many of you are aware, I take care of a lot of stray animals. We've got 10 shelter cats at the house now. And I had a GoFundMe project to help me to catch up after one of them needed a surgery some time ago. Old dad had a tumor. He's doing great now, but I had a GoFundMe. The GoFundMe is still set up. It's still sitting there. But they sent me this email, and I thought this was interesting. It says, post an update for Giving Tuesday. Tomorrow, November 28th, is Giving Tuesday. It's a day when people around the world are in the giving spirit. So it's the perfect time to reach out to your community. Post an update or share on social media to inspire more donations. And it gives you tips for how to post an update in case you're a complete moron. And what the hell is Giving Tuesday? Has anyone ever heard of this? Are people actually in the giving spirit on November 28th? This sounds like such bullshit. I just thought it was hilarious. And why does there have to be a day for everything? Remember when you were a kid and there was just a handful of holidays and you never heard much about anything else? Now there's a day for everything. National Cake Appreciation Day, National Toilet Paper Day, National Lemur Day. I mean, and every day it's not just one thing. If you looked up, you know, what event day schedule it is, because I've done this, every day's got like 12 things on it. How do you know what to celebrate? How about I just ignore them all equally? National Giving Day? I never heard of that. What the hell is going on? I see Semper Fi has joined us. And Element says he's a plumbing and electrical apprentice. We see that in houses all the time, especially rentals. Yeah, it's either been completely neglected or somebody half-assed the work. You know what I mean? Fluke Man says, got an email from Walmart, said a bag of Friskies is delayed, but I'm sure I only got you 3, not 4 bags. I'll keep you updated. Hey, if they want to send an extra one, I'll take it. But thanks again, Fluke Man. I do appreciate it. Johnny says, never heard of it. Monkey says he never heard of it. Preparedness says, if they ask me, I'll give them the finger. Enough begging, you know. I feel bad enough. I felt bad enough asking when I did the GoFundMe. But yeah, people get hit from all sides with all the charities and everything else constantly. You go to any store you go to. Would you like to donate? No. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they're going to do with the money. I don't trust charities. You know, Bingo is here. Glad you could make it, Bingo. I just wanted to share that because I thought that was bizarre. I thought that was really bizarre. And I wanted to point that out. See if anybody ever heard of that and what they thought of it. As I pop open here and move on to the next thing in the list. And this is something that we talked about last week. And so I'm going to run it over again. Anybody here from Canada? I think Urban Angst is from Canada. Anyone here from Canada today? This pertains to you. We talked about it last week. We talked about it Friday. And I'm just following up because of a point that was made. Actually, my wife made this point. And this was from CBS News Canada. Number of assisted deaths jumped more than 30% in 2022, report says. And the report will explain assisted suicides in Canada in their MAID system, as explained here, Canada's Medical Assistance in Dying, or MAID law, and its effects, that currently something around 4.5%. So 4.5 out of every 100 people that die in Canada die from assisted suicide now. And that's up 30% from last year. It's increasing. And it says also that they are expanding this program to include people with mental disabilities. And that will go into effect, I think, March of 2024, something like that. And I'm like, who that has a mental illness can make that decision? That was my question. If you have mental illness, okay, you're mentally ill, are you cognitively, legally able to make the decision for assisted suicide? You know what I mean? Rodney says, treatment option for serious illnesses in Canada. Have you considered dying? Essentially, that's the idea. Well, you know, social medicine, I recommend you off yourself. Fluke Man says, does GoFundMe make money by having more people use their site whenever asking for donations or giving donation? Explains why they're so keen about it. Yeah. They get, it's a very small percentage, but they do take a piece. They do take a piece. So yeah, of course they want to encourage people to use the service. But again, they're expanding this into mental health. And we talked about it Friday. Here it is. The report is a comprehensive overview of Canada's medical assistance in dying MAID law and its effects. The law is set to extend access to medical assistance in dying to those whose sole medical condition is a mental illness. in March of 2024. It's right there. And my wife made an interesting point about this, that because both of us worked in mental health. I've talked about that before. We both worked in the same mental health facility together. And she pointed out that the people in that facility are wards of the state and cannot make medical decisions. All the decisions are made for them by the state or by the caregiver who's in charge of them. And I think that's interesting. That's an interesting point. What she's speculating there is that if you have people who are not cognitively capable legally of making decisions, does that mean that a licensed caregiver, somebody who's in charge of them, a proxy, being wards of the state, can make that decision for that client? Oh, well, your mental illness is pretty bad, so I'm going to recommend assisted suicide. Sorry, Jimmy. Hang in there, buddy. Monkey says, is this essentially just the government encouraging people to game over themselves? Pretty much. Pretty much. I would like to see how that process is done. And it says right here that 44,958 people have received medically assisted deaths since the introduction of federal legislation in 2016. And that's from 2016 to 2022, if I'm not mistaken. So about roughly 45,000 people have done it in that 6-year block. It's a lot of suicides. Urban says there was a scandal in Canada when a military veteran was given the suicide option as part of the available services covered by pension. That's one way to get out of paying the pension. Incredible. Don't like your family? Don't let them get your pension money. Monkey says, might as well get the suicide booth from Futurama, 25 cents. I remember that. I remember the booth. That's where Fry and Bender first met each other. In the suicide booth. And remember, that's also where Soylent Green comes from. If you remember the film, it was either bodies that were collected off the street or bodies from the assisted suicides. And Semper wants to know if they can recommend it for Pelosi. I'm sorry, she's not a Canadian citizen. We don't have that yet in the United States. But I just wanted to make that point. I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to backtrack on that, where my wife brought up the point that, yes, indeed, who's going to make that decision for them if they're not cognitively able to make that decision because they are mentally ill? Well, they have a proxy, and many of them may be wards of the state and not allowed to make decisions for themselves. And that'd be a great way to get rid of them. Get rid of them, Nazi Germany style. Anybody go out for Black Friday? Got something here on Black Friday that I thought was interesting. I did not. I don't do that. I don't really care about Black Friday at all. And this comes from The Street. The Street is the name of the website. And I see that Deanna has joined us. Glad you could make it. And Monkey says, isn't it morally messed up to just suggest that way to go out? Yeah, I mean, just, dude, I know you're having a hard time. Why don't you just give up? Yeah, just give up. Just kill yourself. You're a burden on everybody. I want to see how that goes. And this article from The Street says Black Friday hits record sales, but troubling consumer behavior isn't adding up. What's troubling about consumer behavior? A lot of people have complained that this year's Black Friday deals did not compare to those of the past, but results have shown that consumers didn't seem to care. Black Friday online sales hit a record $9.7 billion across the U.S., up 7.5% versus last year, a 7.5% increase, according to a report by Adobe Analytics. In-person sales saw a minor 1% uptick in growth as well. Despite the rising prices and consumer frustration about Black Friday sales prices being similar to regular day sales prices. And I think that's interesting. I think that's really interesting because people are so frustrated with Black Friday that there were actually protests this year. There were actually protests this year against Black Friday, and Visa had a crash during the Black Friday events that caused a lot of problems. And it's true also that the sales are not that fantastic. Again, if you wait till Christmas, you'll see sales like that again. And maybe you'll get it for even less money because it'll be on clearance after the holiday. So despite all the complaining, all the whining, all the protests, sales are up. That is interesting. The street has an interesting point. As we get back into the article here, it says, but online sales purchases have really driven the continued success of Black Friday sales, while the deals may not necessarily be the same as the massive 80 and 90% discounts that created the lore around Black Friday in the past. I don't remember discounts like that ever. Adobe Digital Insights lead analysts told CNBC that online shopping allows consumers an easier time to compare prices across retailers. Amazon reaped the benefits of the online sales wave on Black Friday as Beryl Tomei, Amazon's last mile delivery and tech vice president, told CNBC's Squawk Box that this year was the company's high sales, most items sold Black Friday in their entire history. And yeah, more people are shopping online because they don't want to go out. It is more convenient. It has become more convenient. Very often nowadays with Amazon, depending upon what you're buying, you can get that stuff delivered the next day. It's kind of funny how it works. Armored Ghost says, thought I might buy something for Black Friday. Then I saw my food bill. Oh, I see your point. Monkey says, in terms of Black Friday, on Sunday, I got myself a 60-inch TV stand. I got started on it last night, but it still needs to be built. Armand says, future Black Friday ad prices are only up 25% for this week only. Buy before they're up 75%. And Velvet Pilot says he went to Black Friday shopping at his grocery store. Bologna was on sale for $8.99 a pound. Couldn't resist. Why does that sound unreasonably high? Dragon says, a reason why Black Friday isn't much of a thing anymore. Online shopping became ubiquitous with the decline of brick and mortar shopping and extended period of sales before and after Friday. And Preparedness says, combination of people realizing what a farce Black Friday is and people feeling the financial squeeze. But they still went out and shopped so much that they broke records. Helta says, I have never been big on Black Friday. I knew it was a scam. People just go into credit card debt every single year despite the savings, or so-called savings as the case may be. And Velvet Pilot says Amazon's Black Friday deals were around 13% off the already inflated price, not a Black Friday deal. And those prices pop in and out regularly anyways. If you really watch on Amazon and look at some of the stuff that they have up, they'll have like 5, 10, 12% off here and there, or like he said, 13%. That pops in and out of a lot of the product that they carry intermittently. Whenever something gets overstocked in certain regions, they'll do that. Flukeman says, I'm sure many of the discounted products had their prices increased for several weeks, then suddenly dropped for Black Friday. Monkey said, I'll miss the Black Friday chaos when people running in there like it's their last day. I know. Running in there like they're trying to escape a fire, like George Costanza. Who remembers that one? Who remembers the George Costanza on Seinfeld when he thought there was a fire in the kitchen and he pushed down and trampled an old woman with a walker? Another one we talked about on Friday was the so-called riots. Oh, it was a riot. I'll just call it what it is. The riots that took place in Dublin. And of course, the riots that took place in Dublin were because of a foreigner who I believe was a citizen, and a knife attack involving 3 children and a woman. And Dublin is fed up with the migration, fed up with the migrants bringing their world views to Ireland instead of adapting to Ireland. They're just pissed off about a lot of things, and that was just a breaking point for many of them. And they went and they burned cars and they broke into stores and they caused a ruckus. And the authorities in Dublin are calling them racist for it, but ignoring the motivation behind the attack at the same time. And so we have more to say about that. And this is the New York Post calling Ireland out for that stance. Which, by the way, there have been counter protests in Ireland now, where people are like, we love migrants, and migrants should be safe here, and all this other baloney. Probably people that were handpicked by the government to go out and counter protest, and it's all fake. I wouldn't be surprised. Bingo says some people went back and Amazon's price history, and most of the items they checked did not change in price. They only added the on sale tag to the ad. That's interesting. That's interesting. And All People says the Irish police were more upset about the reaction to the crime than they were about the crime. That is correct. They called them hooligans, and they called them racist, and they called them all sorts of things, and said it won't be tolerated. Well, here we go with the New York Post. It says, blame Ireland's migrant surge, not right-wingers, for Dublin riots. Yeah, they said they were extreme right-wingers. Dublin, in the 12 months leading up to April this year, 141,600 immigrants landed in Ireland. And Ireland has a lot of big open space, but it's got a small population. 141,600 people in 12 months is a lot for them to digest. The Irish population has increased by more than 2%. If the U.S. had similar immigration, it would mean 9 million extra people. Yeah, that sounds about right. This is the highest level since the prosperous Celtic Tiger era of the late 90s. Ireland's non-nationals comprise a whopping 20% of the population. When it gets to that point, you're diluting the natural population. The tinderbox of immigration blew open Thursday with a mass riot in Dublin following the stabbing of a number of young children. It was 3, I believe, outside a school near the main street. The alleged perpetrator is foreign-born, but still a citizen. The riots have so far led to more than 30 arrests. I think it was 34. And a number of stores destroyed. One source of massive immigration to the United States, the Emerald Isle, is now the destination of choice for Ukrainian refugees and other nationalities seeking a better life and better welfare entitlements. Following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Ireland has had a surge of 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. So that's where they're going. Ukrainian refugees receive more than $200 a week from the Irish state, the most generous supplement provided by any European country. Last year, more than 13,000 people from non-Ukrainian origin entered Ireland, a 400% spike over 2021. A large portion of new applicants hail from Georgia, that is the country Georgia, not the state, a country deemed safe, quote, by Georgia's ambassador in Dublin. This has turned an already explosive housing shortage into a catastrophe. All these factors culminated in the horrific riots this week as hundreds of inner-city residents torched the streets in what the Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, described as huge destruction by a riotous mob. Where is Leo Varadkar from? because that does not sound Irish to me. Buses, rail carriages, and police cars were burned alongside an orgy of destruction and looting. Dublin's fair city where the girls are so pretty, as the famous Irish band the Dubliners proclaimed, was turned on its head as a Foot Locker and several other stores were burned and raided. Rioters even hijacked a bus for reckless joyriding. Police chiefs have been quick to blame far-right anti-immigrant elements, yet public frustration with homeless, joblessness, immigration, lack of law and order, and antisocial behavior have been breeding a revolt by the urban underclass. I can understand that. Ireland has seen a surge in anti-immigration protests in recent years as the large influx of migrants has sparked clashes with already deprived communities and rural enclaves. This includes incidents of arson, such as the deliberate torching of centers used to house migrants. $200 a week. $200 a week for being an immigrant. Do they need to work? Are they expected to work? Are there jobs? Who's letting these people in? Preparedness says those figures are a drop in the ocean compared to the UK, Germany, and France. And Semper Fi saw a story today about the Irish police investigating Conor McGregor because they say he posted hate messages online after the stabbings. Yeah, that's what they need to spend their money on. Dragon says this is what can happen when governments fail to listen to millions of people's concerns. The UK is on its way to unrest in the streets with the way things are. And Fluke Man says, think the Irish Prime Minister is half Indian. I'm not sure. That's why I was asking. I'm sure somebody knows better than I do without my having to look it up real quick here. This is interesting. The bigger problem, an election looms next year amid a dire shortage of houses for the young. Irish youths are swinging to the Sinn Féin opposition political party, which was at one point the political wing of the terrorist Irish Republican Army. And how much of a stone's throw away are they from becoming like that again? The government's not doing their people right, which can be said of pretty much every government, but it's been intensifying over the last few years. It's getting bad. It's getting really bad, not just in Ireland, everywhere. And all people said Ireland's been flooded with Africans, Muslims, Caribbeans. It's the same Cloward Piven scheme that LBJ implemented in the U.S. via Hart, Cellar, and Great Society nearly 60 years ago. And Nature Nerd says small country, too many regulations and permits, housing shortages and job shortages. Let's flood the country with hundreds of thousands of migrants. Yeah, no country needs that. No country needs that. And as I've said many times before, there's nothing immoral or unethical about saying no. We can't handle it. We can't afford it. We can't take care of you. You have to go back where you came from, because our first responsibility is to our own people. There's nothing wrong with that. But these governments act like there is, and they try to guilt everybody into dealing with it. Tolerance has become an object of sucking it up no matter what, as opposed to there being a threshold, which is what tolerance is. How much before you break? Now we're just expected to just keep taking it. All people said in today's dystopian world, hate speech means anything the elite don't want said. In other words, the truth. And it sure does come out that way, doesn't it? It sure does come out that way, doesn't it? As we move around here, we're going to jump all the way to California. We're going to jump all the way out to California, and we're still talking about migrants, and we're still talking about homeless. And this is the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail says over 300 migrants move into San Diego's airport after border city was hit by an influx of crossers. Here we go again. Here we go again. Over 300 migrants have been crashing at the San Diego International Airport as the border city has been hit with a surge of crossers. Overnight stays by migrants have become common at the airport, but in recent weeks, the number has drastically risen. On Thursday, a bus dropped off dozens of immigrants at Terminal 2, Fox 5 reported. Some of them reportedly arrived several hours or days before their scheduled flights, as local organizations have said that they believe that the people were transported here after being processed by Border Patrol. Volunteer Ronnie Elias from a mutual aid group called We Got SD. That's the name of the aid group. We got, said San Diego. That's what SD stands for, I'm sure. Said our biggest concern is all the children that are there and the vulnerable populations that are sleeping there. I don't see any children. Elias frequently checks out the airport to hand deliver meals, hygiene products, and water to the migrants. She said that her organization typically brings 50 sandwiches and meal packs for people, but she knew that wasn't even close to enough when she counted 308 people sleeping over last week. Interesting. Says many of the migrants can be seen sitting in the airport floors as they eat and go on to continue their journeys to visit friends and family members across the country. And who's paying for that? Who's paying for those airline tickets? Dare I even ask? Because I've seen many reports on that's being federally funded. In a statement to San Diego Union Tribune, the San Diego airport said since last year, San Diego International Airport has experienced a significant increase in the number of migrants using the airport to proceed to their next generation or next destination. Excuse me, I read that wrong. And here's the thing, is that this is happening in airports across the country, especially in major cities now, because we've read reports on this in Illinois, in Massachusetts, in New York, places like this where people are just, yeah, do you see any kids in any of that video footage, by the way? I don't see any children. I don't even see anybody that looks Hispanic. That guy might be with the crappy pants. But anyways, back to the point. We have all these people sleeping in these airports. They shouldn't be there. Chicago's been doing it to house homeless people. Look at that woman's Asian. Those guys look like they're from the Middle East. Housing homeless people, housing migrants at international airports all across the country. But for security purposes, I have to take off my belt and my shoes. I have to empty my pockets. I have to stand in a line for 45 minutes to get to board my plane. I can't have a bottle with more than 3 ounces in it. My wife gets pulled aside every time. If we went to an airport together, I haven't been to an airport in a long time, but if we went on a flight together, they'd take her aside and check her hair every damn time. And she doesn't wear weave. She's black and she has a lot of hair. You have to check her afro every freaking time. But if I want to sleep at the airport and set up a little tent and bum out there, oh, sure, no problem. That's perfectly fine. That's safe. I'm insulted. Chris says, I'm late. I will watch the rerun. It'll be here for you, Chris. Glad you could make it. Nature Nerd says, modern transportation of planes, boats, and cars makes it easier for migrants to go anywhere in the world faster and easier than ever before, something governments haven't accepted in this decade. All People says, even if a sovereign nation could handle a flood of economic migrants, it should not have to do so. Nations like Saudi Arabia, UAE, United Arab Emirates, etc., never tolerate that. That's true. Henry Bowman says, majority of them are men. He means the migrants. Flukeman says, why would anyone hand out hygiene products? Do they even use them? Where are they going to use them? Are they going to stand in the sink at the airport and wash up? That reminds me of, I can't think of the name of it. It was a Charles Bronson movie where he was a farmer and he was growing melons and he was hiring migrants with working papers because, you know, you get your migrant visa. Hiring groups of migrants, and he was having some trouble. And there was the bathroom at a gas station that this woman was trying to get the keys for because she had to use the bathroom, and she was one of the migrants. And the guy was like, no, I can't let you. The boss doesn't allow that. And he was like, come on, you can't let her in the bathroom. And the guy says, give me a break. Will you let him in the bathroom? They take a damn bath in the sink and they make a mess. The boss won't let me do it. I'm sorry. It just popped into my head when they talked about that. But yeah, giving them hygiene products. Rodney says most Western governments are actively working against their citizens. I agree. On behalf of illegals, it's so bizarre. It's like we're living in an episode of The Twilight Zone. And Johnny says she should not have her hair checked. It's insulting. Yeah, they always take her side. I don't know what it is. And like I said, and usually it's not like it's all out all over the place like a giant afro, like one of the old Harlem Globetrotters or one of the Jackson 5. It's very well controlled. She styles it and she weaves it herself or whatever. It looks good. It's not out all over the place, and she doesn't wear extensions or a wig, so it's not like there could be something under it. But yeah, they always get her and want to look at her hair. And what the hell is this? What the hell is this? It is insulting. It is insulting. I'm insulted for her. Nature nerd, and especially as a veteran, 21 years in military service. My wife, Nature nerd, says an island should be able to secure their borders. This is ridiculous. It is. But yeah, now they're sleeping in the airports. And I have a huge problem with that. Well, they invented the TSA so they could pretend like they're keeping everybody safe. To this date, and to my knowledge, since the inception of the TSA, they have not stopped one act of terrorism. All they're doing is further enforcing the protocols that were already in place that were not properly exercised that day at Logan Airport before 9/11. Because they had metal detectors, or they had detectors. They had guards. They didn't bother. They just didn't freaking do it. I've walked into Logan Airport and gone through the checkpoint with a knife by accident way back in the 90s. And be like, oh crap, I forgot I had a knife. But they didn't find it because the damn thing wasn't even on. All they had to do was their job. Now we have the TSA. Now, this is very, very interesting to me. It's a local story. But it raises some questions, and I want to share it. I want to share this with you and see what you guys have to think about it. And Johnny says that he worked for the TSA for 4 years and he left 11 years ago. It got so bad. I can imagine. This comes from the military news. DODEA. America's chief of staff arrested in human trafficking sting operation in Georgia. That's not exactly true, but that's what they call it now. They call all prostitution human trafficking. And I'll tell you why I'm going to read this article in a moment. And it's not because we have another person from the Pentagon arrested in something screwy in the last few weeks. Because you remember about, 2 months ago, I read the article about the illegal pit fighting ring with dogs that was being run by staff from the Pentagon. The chief of staff for the Department of Defense Education Activity Schools in the U.S. was arrested last week during a 2-day human trafficking operation in Coweta County, Georgia, according to local authorities. Stephen Hovanek, 64, of Sharpsburg, Georgia, was arrested November 15th in a sting that netted 25 additional suspects on charges related to prostitution as well as drugs, weapons, and warrants, according to the Coweta County Sheriff's Office and its Police to Citizen Portal website. Hovanek was charged with pandering, a crime that involves inducing or compelling an individual to take part in prostitution. In Georgia, it's a misdemeanor charge that includes soliciting the services of a prostitute either for oneself or an arrangement for a third party. And the sheriff justifies that by quoting here, pandering is not a victimless crime as the demand for prostitution drives the sex trafficking market, Sheriff's Office spokesman Sergeant Toby Nix told the Newen Times Herald. Hovanek has served as chief of staff for DODEA Americans since October 2010, according to his Defense Department biography, which has since been removed from the website. An educator for more than 40 years, he worked as a high school vocational teacher, coach, and school administrator in the Virginia public school system before joining DODEA as an assistant principal of Quantico High School in 1996. Okay. Now, this was a sting operation set up whereby, I guess, if I understand it correctly, and I might be wrong on this, and you can look it up, or maybe it says it in here. The sting operation was a coordinated effort between the Coweta County Sheriff's Office, the Haralson County Sheriff's Office, the Department of Homeland Security, the nonprofit Frontline Response Out of Darkness team, an organization focused on rescuing and assisting victims of sex trafficking. 6 victims were rescued during the sting. But my understanding of this was that this was like a massage parlor kind of deal, and it was like regular prostitutes. I don't know about anybody having been rescued. I had not heard that. And the fine, it's $1,000 fine. It's $1,000 fine and a misdemeanor is the charge. And the average, this is a 2-day operation. The average sting operation is somewhere around $100,000. So for $100,000 of taxpayer money, you did a sting where you arrested 26 people that are out on bail in an hour, go to court the next day and pay $1,000 fine. $26,000 recovered to the courts. And that $100,000 isn't going to count the cost. And I looked this up. That's where the $100,000 comes from. I read, I can't remember which one it was. It was a law website for people that are entrapped in these types of sting operations. It says they cost an average of $100,000. So plus whatever the court expenses are to fine 26 people with $1,000. If there was an actual rescue of people who were being held against their will, which is the narrative that is usually followed by the media, by politicians. They love that. And I'll point out, again, I used to work for the Juvenile Justice Authority. Most of the clients that I had, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them, most of them were involved in prostitution. And it was always by choice. None of these girls were forced. They chose to do it. Some of them even said they liked it. I enjoyed doing that. I liked it. Easy way to make some money. Most of the clients that I had, because remember, I ran an all-female facility. I rarely worked with a male. Their sexual experiences were with much older men, usually 3 to 4 times their age. So, I mean, I can understand. Now, if you're going to tell me that it's kids, you rescued some kids, I have no problem with the amount of money spent on this kind of stuff. If you're actually rescuing kidnapped victims, okay. Most of these things, these women know exactly what they're doing. I don't care what they say. I don't believe them. Preparedness says the whole system of society is become corrupt beyond repair. One wonders what the future will look like. It don't look very good. Urban says prostitution is not the same as trafficking. There's certainly a gray area industry, including rough trade, but to conflate the terms is not going to help in the court system. No, it's not. Excuse me. It's not, but they like doing that now. They like making it sound worse than it is in most cases. Was anyone actually rescued here? Was there actually trafficking involved? Excuse me, swallowed wrong. All people wants to know if they mistook my wife for being a foreigner. I seriously doubt that. With a military ID and a U.S. passport, I doubt it. Oh, man. And Monkey says prostitution tends to be huge money makers. That's why you heard about them doing it to pay for college or to pay debt off. Yeah. A lot of people do it now. They have OnlyFans, right? They do a lot of that now because a lot of women will do that. They'll exploit their bodies. They don't want you to do it, but they'll exploit their bodies because they know there's money in it. A lot of women do this. There's worse things. Again, like I said, if it's kids or if it's someone who was actually kidnapped and forced, go for it. Spend as much as you need. If it's just regular prostitution, how are you helping me? John Q. Citizen, what are you doing for me? How's that helping? What are you saving me from? Or are you just attacking an industry that you can't tax? And not even making enough money back. Not even making enough money back from the expense of running this thing in the first place, which, quite frankly, is a form of entrapment. Velvet Pilot says they want to check her hair because they can't believe a black woman's not wearing extensions or weaves. She just doesn't do that. All People says Tim Pool has made a number of videos about this trend in younger women preferring sex work instead of real work. You're right, most are or were not being trafficked. Their behavior was by choice. Yeah, all these girls. And I'm talking, I got 14, 15, 16-year-old girls with a lot of sexual experience from, again, my old JJA days. And they're talking about having been with guys that are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. And it's like, golly, And to me, that's inappropriate because they're too young. Those girls are too young. If it's a woman and she chooses to do that, that's on her. And I would rather see a guy go and find a prostitute who knows what they're doing than go out and do something stupid or hurt somebody. So how is law enforcement helping me, the average citizen, by conducting a sting and entrapping guys who are going to a massage parlor and asking for the bonus round? I don't get it. I must have missed something. Monkey says OnlyFans fantasy is the safer prostitution. I guess so. I've never seen OnlyFans. I only have heard about it and I speculate. And it's brought up as the butt of jokes many times as well. Fluke Man says everyone wants to be a hero on their high horse, that they rescue someone somewhere. Yeah, and I keep I'll reiterate again. As long as if it's children or if they were actually kidnapped and forced, that I understand. Help them. If it's someone an adult who made that choice, whatever. Whatever. Let them do whatever they're going to do. I don't care. Now I'm going to jump to Reuters, and I'm going to jump to Beijing, because here comes your next big thing, ladies and gentlemen. We're at it again. We're at it again. Another pandemic on the way. Rodney says, I would argue that legalizing prostitution and regulating it properly could be a better solution. Then they could tax it. Because I think that's really the problem. If they can't, they want to attack an industry that they can't stick their finger into their pie. They want to stick their finger into their dirty little pie. Baki says, personally, I hate on anyone hurting women and children. Controversial take, I know. Yeah, no kidding. And that's what I mean. If you're talking about women that were kidnapped and coerced, help them. You're talking about kids, help them. But an adult who made a choice, you just wasted my tax money. And I don't like that. I don't like that. Here's a video clip. And this is circulating on Reuters. I don't have, let me back that up and turn the sound on. I do not have an actual story here because it's all video clips. And this is in Beijing because they're trying to gear up for another pandemic. I'm sure you can see that image now. You can probably hear it, but there's nothing really to hear. And this is a hospital in Beijing. Very crowded. It looks like a hotel. It looks like an airport. Like 1,000 people. It goes way deep. All back there. And it says that crowds packed Beijing Hospital after respiratory illness surge, and that hospitals warn of long waits as China grapples with a surge in cases involving respiratory illness. 2 points about this really quick before I open up the next article, which also pertains to this. Number one, I have seen many times photos and videos of hospitals in China. They always look like that. So don't tell me it's crowded because of a surge in respiratory illness. They're always packed like that. That's what social media, I almost said social media. That's what social medicine looks like. Okay. When it's tax funded, expect long waits, expect hundreds and even thousands of people to be jammed in there. Why do you think that hospital has a waiting area that's so damn big? It always looks like this. Number two, if they're all in there because of a respiratory illness, they're stupid because they're exposing themselves to more of it. Oh, I can't help it. Urban Angst says, why are they at the hospital? They all look fine. I see no emergencies. Well, you know, most people that go to the hospital emergency room don't have a damn emergency in the first place, which is part of why healthcare is so freaking expensive. Prime Mover says, you just made a separation between women and adults. Oh, did I? You know what I meant, though. That ties into this. This article is connected to that. Because I wasn't trying to say women aren't adults, but you know what I mean. This is a Newsweek article. And here's Paul DiMartino. It says, hello from the People's Republic of New Jersey. Hope Thanksgiving was awesome. Keeping my head on a swivel. No kidding. Yeah, keep your head on a swivel. Watch your 6. 6 o'clock high and 6 o'clock low, because you never know. Yeah, I just spent a quiet evening at home with my wife, but that's all I need. That's all I need. Urban says, that reminds me of a CBC talking about Canadian emergency rooms working at capacity, but that's how emergency rooms are always scheduled to save space, equipment, and staff for other departments. But this is China again, because here's your next big thing. China's C virus, and I have to say C virus because ScrewTube doesn't like it if I say the actual term. China's C virus trauma returns as hazmat workers disinfect the streets. And here you see a picture for those of you who are able to see, and I'll describe it for everyone else. Guys in hazmat suits with masks and goggles, spraying something on the street as they walk around. I thought it was only airborne transmittable. Why are you spraying the streets? Public health workers wearing full protective gear have appeared on the streets of northern China, according to footage on social media, evoking memories of the country's stringent antivirus measures during the C virus pandemic. The hazmat-clad personnel were seen spraying disinfectant in public spaces in Shanhe, China, or Shanhe, northern Hebei province, roughly 50 miles east of their capital, Beijing. Oh, what a coincidence. According to the poster of the images and video footage, it remains unclear whether this was a local government initiative or a central government directive. The reemergence of the gear, however, has raised speculation about the potential return of pandemic-era restrictions amid a surge of respiratory illnesses, notably among children. I didn't see any kids in that footage of the hospital, did you? Which has strained hospitals in the region. Their hospitals are always strained. The outbreak is being closely watched by the World Health Organization, the agency said last week. I bet it is, because they've got nothing better to do. In the past days, China's state-controlled media have reported on hospitals in Beijing, Tianjin, and other northern areas operating at maximum capacity. Beijing's Children's Hospital alone reported admitting over 7,000 daily cases, one report said. So a walk in the park, that's a typical day in a Beijing hospital. Patients said they experienced closed outpatient clinics and long lines. Some endured waits of a day or longer at emergency departments. Who's going to stand in line in a hospital more than a day? Are you going to stand in a line at a hospital for 32 hours? If you can stand in a line that long, your respiratory problems aren't that bad. Patients said they experienced, I read that, on Douyin, the Chinese version of the short video sharing platform TikTok. Video showed disease prevention teams disinfecting a classroom and city streets while dressed from head to toe in hazmat suits. Get ready, guys. They're going to try it again. Oh, wow. Let me catch up a couple comments here. Preparedness says some of these scientific experts are way too twitchy. Here, alarm bells were ringing because one guy caught a variation of swine flu. You know, it makes me think of, is it Lysol? There's a Lysol commercial where a kid coughs, and it's a real simple cough. It's a little girl. She's like, like that. And the dad comes running out with the Lysol and starts spraying it like crazy. And I'm like, it didn't even sound like a sickness cough. You know what a sickness cough sounds like. You guys are old enough. You want me to run around the house and spray because you heard a kid cough? People cough. I coughed a few minutes ago because I swallowed wrong. Maybe her throat was dry. You're going to disinfect the house because your daughter had a dry throat? Urban says the hazmat smoke workers remind me of beekeepers putting the bees in a trance with their smoke devices so they can get into their space and take all the juicy honeycombs. Parallels, anyone? Exactly, and that's a great analogy. Monkey says if China were to do the zero C virus plan again for them, they just collapse at this point with their economy already collapsing. But China would be willing to do it to control their people. They would take the hit. Their government would do that. We're talking about a strictly totalitarianistic government. They are a communist government. They purport to appear to be a more westernized society, allowing commerce, allowing businesses. They have Chinese billionaires, but at its core, they're communist. Monkey says with more foreign businesses are moving away from the mainland. And Monkey says, and even a declining birth rate. Preparedness says pretty common in Britain for all hospitals to be at maximum capacity these days. Yeah. Social medicine. There you are. Even Benny Hill used to make fun of that in his specials. He did one where he contrasted a paying customer versus a social medicine hospital. I don't know if anyone remembers that one. But anyways, we'll go ahead and wrap up now. Again, this is Coffee Talk, or at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University on YouTube, or Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. So I'll go ahead and wrap things up as we're over the top of the hour. Thanks again to everybody who was able to join us here this afternoon. Hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will do this again tomorrow.